What am I thankful for? Well, I could give a standard answer. There are things in my life that I am deeply thankful for. I'm thankful that I'm alive and that I have good health. I'm thankful that I'm married and married to the person that I love. I'm thankful that I'm part of a community of people who have been very supportive over the past year, and we've accomplished so much. I'm thankful that I have a job and decent economic security in my life in a world where there's so many people suffering. I'm thankful for quite a few things. But rather than focus on what I personally am thankful for, I'm going to comment on what our community can be thankful for. We are thankful for Karl Marx and Frederick Engels. We are thankful that they taught us that history is constantly in motion, that A does not equal A, and that history is constantly marching forward, and that the universe is ever changing, and that no two things are alike, and that no society or political system is eternal. The kings of Europe, the Pope in the Vatican, they all said that their rule and that the political and social and economic order that they represented was permanent. But Karl Marx and Frederick Engels taught us that it was not permanent, that the only thing constant is change, and that history is marching forward. And they taught us that just as hunter-gatherer civilization gave way to slavery in the ancient empires of Mesopotamia, Greece, Rome, Egypt, etc., and just as the ancient slave empires were replaced by feudalism, that feudalism gave birth to capitalism, and that this capitalism that we live under will also be replaced. And just like the old systems, it produced its own gravediggers, a class of people, the working class, those of us with nothing to lose but our chains, nothing to sell but our labor, and a whole world to win. The greatest class in history, the working class. The working class, produced by capitalism, are the gravediggers of capitalism. And that ultimately, capitalism, the system of production organized for profit, will be replaced with socialism, a system where the banks and the factories and the major industries and the centers of economic power are organized rationally to serve the people, to serve the people, and not the profits of a wealthy few. And we are thankful for Marx and Engels for bringing forward that understanding. We are thankful that they, through teaching this ideology that they developed, laid the basis for the labor unions to go out and struggle and win rights for the workers on the job. We're thankful that by laying the basis with their ideology, the Marxists were able to lead the struggle for the right of women to vote. We are thankful that workers organized political parties and entered the political process in their own accord, in their own interest, and created things like 12 and even 8-hour workdays and minimum wages and protections for the workers on the job. We're very thankful for that. We're thankful for all the struggles for justice that were led by Marxists and for the ideology that enabled those struggles to blossom. People will naturally fight against unjust conditions. There will be spontaneous resistance among the people. However, it was the scientific ideology of Marx and Engels that enabled that resistance to take on a much more effective character. by understanding the objective laws of history. But we know that the Marxist movement of Engels and Marx, what they created, that culminated in the Second International, the German Social Democratic Party, the British Labour Party, the French Parliamentary Socialists, that this movement was hijacked. It was turned into its opposite. The very forces they sought to overthrow began utilizing it as a mechanism for stabilizing the imperialist homelands as they spread their tentacles across the planet and established a global financial system called imperialism. And that this degeneration and this watering down, this revisionism of what Marx and Engels stood for ultimately culminated in the First World War, when these parties that had been born as revolutionary parties that fought for the working class all proved that they had deteriorated into mere mechanisms within the imperialist bureaucratic states and sent workers off to die in World War I. But we are thankful for Vladimir Lenin and the Bolsheviks because they saw this coming, and they saw that the Second International did not have revolutionary potential. They saw that imperialism was stabilizing the Western capitalist countries and that the revolutionary energy would come from the colonized countries of the world. It would come from South America. It would come from Africa. It would come from Asia. And that the 20th century would not be defined by the working class of the Western countries rising up and seizing their factories, but rather the 20th century would be defined by the colonized nations that were being kept in a state of underdevelopment by the dominance of Western corporations, struggling to break their chains and establish national liberation. And that when the Bolsheviks broke Russia out of the imperialist system, and when Stalin launched the 5-year economic plans, the world saw a whole country rise up from nothing and rapidly industrialize and electrify and build modern housing and wipe out illiteracy. And the whole world saw solid proof that capitalism and the rule of profits is not necessary, that a society can be organized in a different way. Millions of people were lifted from poverty. Millions of people got running water and electricity, got education, and saw their country modernize because of socialist methods. What Western capitalism and imperialism would not have done was done with state central planning and the 5-year economic plans. And we are thankful that Stalin was able to do this and that millions of people were able to see their country lifted up. And furthermore, we are thankful for Mao Zedong. Mao Zedong lifted China from the chains of colonialism, from the chains of impoverishment and division and balkanization. He lifted China. His great revolution that involved organizing the peasantry and the youth and the women and the most downtrodden people in China's society. His revolution that employed methods of from the masses to the masses, the mass line, criticism, self-criticism. His movement ultimately has enabled China to become the second largest economy in the world and to raise millions and millions of people up from poverty. We are thankful for Mao Zedong and his movement. But furthermore, we look at the problems of 20th century socialism. We look at the fall of the Soviet Union and the great defeat that happened in the early 90s. We look at the fall of the socialist countries of the Eastern Bloc. We look at the political confusion of the counterculture and the synthetic left and the manipulation of our movement by CIA programs like the Congress for Cultural Freedom and MK Ultra. We look at how the dialectical side of Marxism, this belief that change, and thank you so much, that change always comes through struggle, that confrontation and destruction and tearing things down is always the best way of doing things, is always what must be done. This belief that deconstruction is the way forward. We are thankful to see that the socialist countries of the world in the 21st century have broken with this harmful dialectical way of viewing things. That instead they understand that the strength of the Soviet Union and the strength of Deng Xiaoping in China, the strength of Fidel Castro, was their ability to create oneness, their ability to get people to feel as if they were part of a community, not to struggle, not to tear things down, but to build, to join arm in arm with their brothers and sisters. We're forced to think of the writings of Anna Louise Strong, the work of Edgar Snow, the work of Agnes Smedley, and how they describe the feeling in those Chinese communes, the feeling on those collective farms in the 1930s, the feeling in those factories and the Stakhanovich movement of the Soviet Union, the feeling that you got when you visited Cuba in the early 60s as they were rapidly building the country up, was something different. It was something very, very different from that desire to rip things down, that desire to exacerbate the contradiction, that desire to tear down the old and march into the future that one got from the writings of Marx and Engels and the European intellectuals. We are thankful that that city-building tendency prevailed, and that the destructive impulses that had defined socialist thought, the ugly events like the Cultural Revolution, like the Yezhovshchina of the late 30s, like the mass executions following the Cuban Revolution, we are thankful that socialism was able to break with some of this thinking. We are also thankful that socialism has lost its hostility to religion. We are thankful that in the final years of his life, Fidel Castro described himself as a Christian. He met with the Pope. He met with prominent Russian Orthodox priests. He quoted the Bible. And he said that in his practice, he was indeed a follower of Jesus Christ. We're thankful for the Sandinistas who lead Nicaragua. And while Guatemala and Honduras are deeply impoverished countries filled with chaos as they writhe under the boot of Western colonialism and imperialism, Nicaragua has raised millions of people from poverty. It has created worker cooperatives and micro-entrepreneurship programs, and it has launched a state-run central plan to improve the lives of the people. It has electrified this entire Central American nation. It has provided housing to millions of people. And compared to the countries that are still under the dominance of Western capitalism, the Nicaraguan government, the Sandinistas, have had astounding achievements. And they do so in the name of Christianity, socialism, and solidarity, not in the name of atheism, not in the name of tearing things down and unleashing hate, but rather in the name of love and oneness and solidarity and pride in their culture. They've lifted up the indigenous people and granted them territorial autonomy. They have built up the regions of the country that have been historically impoverished. They have worked very, very hard to build up the rural areas and not have the country be polarized between the town and the countryside. They have done amazing things. And Venezuela, what they have achieved with their 32 universities. When Chavez, the leader of the socialist revolution, was first elected, they had only 12. But under the leadership of Maduro, they now have 32 public universities. They've wiped out illiteracy. They've provided huge amounts of housing and created universal housing for their population. We're thankful for that. We're thankful for what Evo Morales achieved in Bolivia when he had the highest rate of economic growth in South America. We are thankful for what's been achieved in other parts of the world. The Vietnamese, with their socialist-oriented market economy, have created an economic miracle, according to the World Economic Forum, and they couldn't have done it merely by practicing free market economics. They did it by investing in their population, building infrastructure, mobilizing people, and forcing the economy to serve public good, utilizing market mechanisms, but having a state that cares for the people and serves the people, not the rich and powerful. And we are also thankful for the great Imam Khomeini, the leader of the Islamic Revolution of Iran. Khomeini mobilized the Iranian people, led them in their struggle to defeat the Shah. He led the Iranian people to defeat the Iraqi invaders. He led the Iranian people to have a construction jihad and build their nation up from nothing, to industrialize their country, to bring electricity to the whole region, to bring education across the entire nation of Iran, to build a modern country where profits are not in command, but rather the slogan is not capitalism, but Islam. And the major centers of economic power are controlled by the state. And the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, a committed anti-imperialist organization, is the biggest entity economically in the country. We are thankful that the Islamic Revolution of Iran has done so much to raise people from poverty, so much to stand with the Palestinians in their resistance against Israel. We are thankful for that. And furthermore, we are thankful for the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, the man who had the brilliance of using economic methods to overturn the devastating consequences of the fall of the Soviet Union, to create two gigantic state-controlled megacorporations, Gazprom and Rosneft, to stabilize Russia's economy, to throw criminal oligarchs in jail, to provide services and education to the population. And now we are thankful for the military of Russia that is coming to the aid of the peoples of Donbass, the people who've suffered 8 years of bombardment, had their language outlawed, been facing a food blockade, the people who saw the Minsk Accords that were supposed to recognize their right to their language and their culture and their autonomy, saw those accords ignored, saw the World War II memorials being torn down, saw racial and ethnic hatred being promoted. The people who lived for 8 years praying that somebody would come to support them have now come out in big numbers to cheer and support the Russian army that has come in to protect them and to allow them to vote in referendums, to break away from a government that doesn't want them, a government that hates them because they speak Russian, because they are proud of the Soviet Union and the defeat of the Nazis. We are thankful for all the Russian folks who are on the battlefields, sacrificing to protect their homeland, to make sure that NATO, the criminal terrorist coalition that destroyed Libya, that destroyed Afghanistan, that destroyed the former Yugoslavia, to make sure that that criminal alliance never creeps any closer to Russia and never brings nuclear weapons right to Russia's doorstep. We are thankful for all the sacrifices of those people are making on the battlefield, the Russians, for the Belarusians. But in addition to all of that, we are thankful for those right here in our own country who have sacrificed and worked hard for justice. We are thankful for Harriet Tubman and John Brown and Frederick Douglass. We are thankful for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. We are thankful for Gus Hall and Eugene Debs and Joe Hill and the industrial workers of the world. We are thankful for the Communist Party of the 1930s that mobilized the working class to build industrial unions and sit-down strikes and unemployment councils demanding jobs and education. We're thankful for the Black Panthers and their work to provide a free breakfast program and to build a rainbow coalition of working people on the basis of economic justice. We are thankful for the revolutionary youth movement and the organizations coming out of the 1970s that worked hard to spread revolutionary and anti-imperialist politics among the broad masses of Americans, that rejected the counterculture new left politics promoted by the CIA, but instead attempted to build a popular working class organization. The sacrifices made by so many people in the new communist movement of the 1970s. And furthermore, we are thankful for those who kept the flame of anti-capitalism and anti-imperialism alive in times where such a message was not well received and not popular. We're thankful for those who marched in support of Mumia Abu Jamal and prevented his execution. We are thankful for those who continued to support Leonard Peltier, the great Native American, who has been framed up and sent to federal prison for a crime that even his prosecutor does not believe he is guilty of. We are thankful for those who have organized in so many progressive ways. And furthermore, we stand in solidarity with all who hold on to what Marxism, socialism, anti-imperialism stand for. All who have refused to surrender in the face of wokeness, the toxic ideology through which the imperialists have attempted to co-opt the beautiful movement of working people, the beautiful movement for socialism and anti-imperialism that is spread across the planet. We are thankful for all who have been firm and bold and brave to resist the cancel culture, to resist the smears and the lies and the harassment that faces anyone who stands for these genuine principles. We are thankful for those who have not surrendered and become Democratic Party operatives, and become academic privileged postmodernists, but instead held on to class struggle, populism, scientific socialism, and Marxism. But in addition to that, we are thankful for the amazing breakthroughs, for the amazing understanding that we now can have when we read the writings of Xi Jinping and the publications of the Chinese Communist Party, for the brilliance and the understanding we can get from Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-un and Kim Jong-il and all of the leaders of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. We're thankful for the understanding of Marxism we can get by reading the texts of Bolivarian socialism and the way that they've updated their revolutionary movements to meet the needs of the people of Latin America, to correct the mistakes of socialism in the 20th century. And we are thankful for many different revolutionary traditions and currents all around the world that all have led us to continue the work that we are doing right here, that have led us to understand the necessity and the possibility for creating 21st century socialism in America. For all of those who have allowed us and encouraged us to break with the dogmatism of the past and to embrace 21st century socialism and Marxism, to embrace the revolutionary movements of the global South, of the colonized world, and to reject the toxic, hateful, pro-imperialist drivel that now dominates academia, presenting itself as Marxism, when in reality it is nothing but pro-imperialist ideology designed to incite people against each other, destroy communities, and lay the basis for a new world war. We are thankful. We are thankful. We are deeply, deeply thankful for our heritage and our tradition. I agree with Hugo Chavez that Jesus Christ was the greatest socialist in all history. And I agree that, as Che Guevara said, a true revolutionary is motivated by feelings of great love. And I believe that what we are about, the constructive, optimistic socialism promoted by the Center for Political Innovation, has a very big future in this country. I believe this, and I am thankful that I have the opportunity to be part of this. And as hard as things are in America now, I'm thankful to be alive in this time because I know we are heading toward the end of this rotten system. We are heading toward the moment where America will join with Russia and China and Iran and Venezuela, where America will reorganize its economy to serve the people and public good, where growth will once again be promoted. I know we are heading toward the end, the final days, the last days of American imperialism. And I know that the work that we do in this time is going to be very challenging, but very important. And that we have a very big, big privilege to be alive in this time and be tasked with the great task that we have to rescue the American people from the nightmare unfolding, to build communities of solidarity in a society where people are incited against each other and taught to be antisocial. It's hard work. It's a big task, but we are not afraid to take up history's challenge. And I want to express nothing but great love to all of you and great appreciation to all of you for what has been happening and what you have done over the course of the last few years and for what you have yet to do. Because we have so much more to accomplish. So much more lies ahead in the coming months and the coming year. We have a lot of big plans around peace on the Korean Peninsula, around events that are planning and that are happening, around books that are going to be published. We are going to lay the intellectual basis for something new, just like our forefathers, Marx and Engels. All the activism that came required ideological guidance. Thought and ideas are very important. And the thought and the ideas that we are putting forward on this channel are very, very, very important. And I want to express great love and appreciation to all of you for everything that is happening in our time, because we all have an important role to play. We're all doing the best we can. And we're all facing tough circumstances. This is a very hard time to be alive. It's a very hard time to be a young person. This is an age of so much sadness, so much hopelessness, so much rage and resentment, so much pessimism. But I want to thank you all for coming together with me and using our human energy and our power to connect to something higher, something that can enable us to get beyond it all and build something beautiful. So I want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart and tell you how thankful I am for you and for the support that you give to the continued work that we do. And that's how I'll end my opening remarks for tonight.